The moment people find out you're pregnant, the advice starts. Don't raise your hands above your head. It'll wrap the cord around the baby's neck. Heartburn means a hairy baby. Carrying high means a girl. Carrying low means a boy. Don't cut your hair. Don't sit cross-legged. Eat for two. Some of this comes from grandparents, some from group chats, some from corners of the internet that sound confident but aren't. The problem isn't that people are trying to help. The problem is that nobody tells you which parts are actually true. This video goes through the most common pregnancy myths, where each one came from, and what's actually true. Let's get into it. Heartburn means a hairy baby. This is one of the few pregnancy myths that's actually been studied, and the results surprised even the researchers. A 2006 study found a real correlation between severe heartburn and babies born with more hair. But the connection isn't magic, it's hormonal. The same hormones that relax the muscle separating the stomach from the esophagus, which is what causes heartburn, are also linked to fetal hair growth. So the myth isn't wrong exactly. It's just describing a side effect of the same hormonal process, not a cause and effect between heartburn and hair. The actual cause of heartburn? Pregnancy hormones relax the valve at the top of the stomach, allowing acid to travel upward more easily, especially as the growing uterus puts pressure on the stomach later in pregnancy. Next myth. Carrying high or low predicts the baby's sex. This one is almost entirely about anatomy. Yours, not the baby's. How high or low a bump appears depends on factors like your body shape, the strength and tone of your abdominal muscles, whether this is your first pregnancy or not, and the position the baby happens to be in on that particular day, which changes constantly. A first pregnancy with strong abdominal muscles often appears to sit higher, simply because the muscles haven't stretched before. A later pregnancy may sit lower for the same reason in reverse. The actual way to determine sex? An ultrasound, or genetic testing if it was done. Next myth. Don't raise your hands above your head. This myth shows up across many cultures, usually with the same warning. The umbilical cord will wrap around the baby's neck. Here's what's actually true. Umbilical cord position has nothing to do with the mother's arm movements. The cord moves based on the baby's own movements inside the amniotic fluid, and babies move a lot in every direction throughout pregnancy. Cord position around the neck, called a nuchal cord, is actually fairly common, and in the vast majority of cases is identified and managed without issue during delivery. It happens regardless of whether the mother ever reaches for a top shelf. Where this myth likely comes from, in some cultures, the original concern wasn't really about the cord. It was about overexertion or balance later in pregnancy, which got passed down as a more specific and inaccurate warning over generations. Next myth. Now, a few myths that aren't really about the baby at all. They're about you, and they tend to add pressure at exactly the moment you need less of it. Eating for two. This phrase has been around for generations, and it sounds logical. There are two people now, so eat twice as much. But here's what the actual numbers look like. In the first trimester, most people need roughly the same number of calories as before pregnancy. In the second trimester, the increase is typically around 300 to 350 extra calories a day, about the equivalent of a glass of milk and a slice of toast. In the third trimester, it rises slightly further, but still nowhere close to double. The phrase likely comes from a time when food scarcity was a more pressing concern than overconsumption, and eat more, don't restrict yourself was protective advice for a different era. What actually matters more than quantity? The quality and consistency of nutrition, which is why prenatal vitamins and balanced meals get emphasized more than total calorie count. Next myth. You can't exercise while pregnant. This myth likely comes from outdated guidance from decades ago, when much less was understood about pregnancy physiology, and the cautious default was simply rest. What's now understood is quite different. For most pregnancies without complications, regular moderate exercise, Walking, swimming, prenatal yoga, light strength training is associated with better sleep, reduced back pain, and easier labor and recovery. The activities that do carry real caution are specific: contact sports, activities with a high fall risk, and exercises involving lying flat on the back for extended periods later in pregnancy, since this can put pressure on a major blood vessel. The myth took "be careful" and turned it into "do nothing," when the actual guidance has always been somewhere in between. Next myth. Spicy food induces labor. This is one of the most repeated late pregnancy myths and one of the most tested by desperate third trimester people everywhere. There's no evidence that spicy food triggers labor. What spicy food can do is stimulate the digestive system, which, especially late in pregnancy when digestion is already slower, can sometimes cause cramping or increased bowel activity that feels similar to early labor sensations. So the myth likely persists because of timing, not causation. Someone eats a spicy meal in their last week, has digestive discomfort that resembles contractions, and then goes into labor a day or two later, which would have happened regardless. What's actually been studied around inducing labor naturally? Very little has strong evidence behind it. Most natural induction methods either have no effect or only work if the body was already very close to starting labor on its own. Next myth. Morning sickness means a healthy pregnancy. This one gets repeated as reassurance. The sicker you feel, the healthier the baby. There's a kernel of truth buried in here, but it's been oversimplified into something that causes unnecessary worry for a lot of people. As covered in the symptoms video, nausea is linked to HCG levels, and HCG is produced by a healthy, developing placenta. So in a general sense, nausea is a sign that pregnancy hormones are present and active. But the absence of nausea does not mean the opposite. A significant number of healthy pregnancies involve little to no nausea at all. It varies enormously between individuals, and even between different pregnancies for the same person. Why this myth causes real anxiety? People who don't experience nausea sometimes worry something is wrong, simply because they were told the opposite was true. It isn't. Next myth. A few more, covered quickly, because once you hear the actual explanation, most of these stop holding any weight at all. Don't cut your hair during pregnancy. This has no biological basis. It likely originates from cultural beliefs about hair symbolizing life force or vitality, found in several traditions, but there's no physiological connection between hair length and pregnancy outcomes. You'll know exactly when labor starts. For some people, yes, clear, unmistakable signs. For many others, early labor is subtle and easy to mistake for other things, which is part of why providers give specific guidance on when to call, rather than relying on "you'll just know." Stress during pregnancy harms the baby. This one is partially true, but widely overstated. Chronic, severe, unmanaged stress over long periods has been studied and linked to some effects. The normal stress of daily life, a hard day, an argument, a deadline, has not been shown to cause harm. The myth often adds a layer of guilt on top of already existing stress, which is the opposite of helpful. Heartburn medication is dangerous during pregnancy. Many over-the-counter options are specifically considered safe during pregnancy and are commonly recommended by providers. This myth often causes people to suffer through discomfort unnecessarily out of fear that isn't supported by the guidance they'd actually be given if they asked. You shouldn't sleep on your back. There is something real underneath this one. By the third trimester, lying flat on the back for long periods can put pressure on a major blood vessel and reduce blood flow. But briefly rolling onto your back or waking up in that position is not harmful. The myth often gets exaggerated into never, even for a second, which causes unnecessary panic if someone wakes up in that position. Those are some of the most common myths in pregnancy: heartburn and hair, carrying high or low, raised arms, eating for two, exercise, spicy food, morning sickness, and a handful more. Almost every myth on this list comes from the same place: a real observation or outdated advice that got passed down without the explanation attached. Once the explanation comes back, the myth usually loses its power completely. that's really what this entire channel is for. This is one piece of the manual nobody gave you. Subscribe for the rest of it.